You never truly know someone until you watch them circle a dying woman's bedside like a vulture. My name is Sarah, and I'm about to tell you how my own sister destroyed everything I believed about family, love, and loyalty in the span of 3 devastating months. It's a story that starts with a beautiful diamond necklace and ends with a truth so shocking it will make your blood boil. Our mother was dying of pancreatic cancer. The diagnosis came swift and merciless. 6 months, maybe 8 if we were lucky. But Claire, my youngest sister by 3 years, saw opportunity where I saw heartbreak. While I was arranging hospice care and researching treatment options, Claire was already calculating the value of our family heirlooms. The necklace had been in our family for 4 generations, great-grandmother's diamonds, passed from mother to daughter, each stone holding decades of love, sacrifice, and dreams. Mother had always promised it would be mine someday, the eldest daughter, the one who stayed close to home, who called every Sunday and remembered every birthday. But Claire had other plans. She moved in during Mother's final weeks, playing the role of devoted caregiver with Oscar-worthy performance, fresh flowers every day, constant doting, endless tears about how much she'd miss Mama. Meanwhile, I was relegated to awkward visiting hours, feeling like an intruder in my own childhood home. Sarah's so busy with her own life, Claire would whisper to Mother during my brief visits, her voice dripping with false concern. I just want to spend every precious moment I can with you. I watched helplessly as Mother's eyes began to cloud with confusion, not from the medication, but from Claire's carefully planted seeds of doubt. My sister was a master manipulator, always had been, but I never imagined she'd use our dying mother as her final victim. The day Mother changed her will, Claire made sure I was conveniently stuck in traffic. By the time I arrived, the lawyer was gone, and Mother was too exhausted to discuss what had happened. Claire just smiled that sickeningly sweet smile and patted Mother's hand. Don't worry about boring legal stuff, Mama, just rest. When Mother passed 3 weeks later, the reading of the will felt like a public execution. Claire inherited the diamond necklace, our family's crown jewel, worth over $50,000. I received grandmother's simple silver locket, probably worth $30 at a pawn shop. As Claire fastened those diamonds around her neck at the funeral, smiling through her crocodile tears, I clutched that modest locket and wondered how I'd failed to protect the woman who gave me life. But what Claire didn't realize was that sometimes the most valuable treasures hide in the most unexpected places. 6 months after we buried Mother, I was finally ready to clean out her phone and cancel her accounts when I discovered the messages that would haunt me forever. Claire had been texting our mother for over 2 years, long before the cancer diagnosis. Message after message of calculated poison, each one more devastating than the last. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the evidence of my sister's methodical destruction of my relationship with our dying mother. Sarah only calls when she needs something. Read one text from 18 months ago. I'm worried she's just waiting for her inheritance. Mom, I would never say this to her face, but I see how she looks at your jewelry. Another message, sent just weeks before Mother's diagnosis. I don't want to upset you, but Sarah asked me about your will again yesterday. It breaks my heart that she's so focused on material things when she should just be loving you. The lies were so elaborate, so consistent, that I could barely breathe. Claire had created an entire false narrative where I was the greedy, selfish daughter, while she was the devoted, selfless one. Worse yet, she'd been intercepting my calls. When I contacted the hospice nurses, the full scope of Claire's deception became clear. Linda, Mother's primary caregiver, remembered everything with painful clarity. Your sister told us you were going through a difficult divorce and couldn't handle seeing your mother so sick. Linda explained over coffee, her voice gentle but firm. She said you'd specifically asked her to filter your calls and visits so you wouldn't be overwhelmed. We thought we were protecting you both. My divorce had been finalized 3 years earlier. Claire had used my old pain as a weapon, convincing everyone I was too fragile and selfish to properly care for our dying mother. But Miss Sarah, Linda continued, your mother asked for you constantly those last few weeks. She kept saying she felt like something was wrong between you two. But Claire always reassured her that you just needed space to grieve. The cruelest revelation came from Margaret, the night nurse who'd grown close to Mother during those final weeks. Your mother was so confused about why you seemed distant during your visits, she whispered, clearly uncomfortable sharing such intimate details. Claire told her you'd said the medical bills were becoming a financial burden, and you wished things would move faster. Your poor mother cried about it several times. I had never said anything of the sort. Every word was Claire's invention. As the evidence mounted, I realized my sister hadn't just stolen a necklace, she'd stolen our mother's final months, poisoning them with lies and manipulation. She'd robbed Mother of peace, convincing her that her eldest daughter was counting down the days until her death for financial gain. The most devastating discovery came last, a voicemail I'd left for Mother the night before she died, telling her I loved her and would visit the next morning. The timestamp showed it was never played. Claire had been controlling Mother's phone, deciding which messages she heard and which ones disappeared forever. As Sarah's heart shattered from this betrayal, she clutched her grandmother's simple locket, unaware that within its modest frame lay the key to everything. The truth about Claire's deception didn't set me free, it buried me alive. For weeks after discovering those messages, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on anything except the crushing weight of what I'd lost. It wasn't just the necklace, though, that stung deeply. It was the knowledge that my mother died believing I was a selfish, money-hungry daughter who saw her as nothing more than a financial opportunity. Claire had stolen something far more precious than diamonds. She'd stolen my mother's love in her final moments. The worst part was watching Claire parade around family gatherings like a peacock, those diamonds glittering against her throat while she accepted condolences and praise for being such a devoted daughter. At our cousin's wedding, 2 months after the funeral, she made sure everyone noticed her inheritance. Mother always said this necklace should go to the daughter who truly understood its value. Claire announced to a group of relatives, her fingers caressing the stones with theatrical reverence. She finally saw who really cared about family, not just material things. The irony was suffocating. Claire spoke of caring about family while systematically destroying it, of understanding value while scheming to steal everything of worth. I watched our aunts and cousins nod approvingly, praising her sacrifice during Mother's illness, completely unaware of the manipulation that had occurred. I stopped attending family events, stopped answering calls, stopped pretending everything was fine when my world had crumbled into ash and lies. In my isolation, I found myself clutching grandmother's simple silver locket constantly, running my fingers over its tarnished surface like a rosary. It was all I had left, this modest piece of jewelry that probably came from a department store decades ago. While Claire wore $50,000 around her neck, I had $30 worth of silver and a heart full of rage. The locket became my anchor, the only physical connection I had to genuine family love. Grandmother had been different from the others, wise, gentle, never playing favorites or keeping score. She'd loved us both equally, or so I'd thought. Some nights, I'd stare at my reflection wearing that plain little locket and wonder if I'd imagined the love I thought we'd shared. Maybe Claire was right. Maybe I was the greedy one, the selfish daughter who'd somehow fooled herself into believing she deserved more. But little did Sarah know that her grandmother, the wisest woman in their family, had anticipated this exact scenario decades earlier. 3 months into my self-imposed exile, I finally forced myself to tackle the boxes of family documents that had been gathering dust in my spare bedroom since Mother's death. I was sorting through decades of receipts and old insurance papers when I knocked over my coffee mug, sending hot liquid cascading across the desk. As I frantically grabbed papers to save them from the spreading puddle, my elbow caught the chain of grandmother's locket, yanking it hard against the desk edge. The impact was sharp and finola, tiny metallic crack that made my heart sink. Even this last connection to family love was breaking apart in my hands. But as I examined the damaged locket, something impossible caught my eye. The back panel had split open, revealing a hidden compartment I never knew existed. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper so thin it was nearly transparent, lay a tiny piece of paper covered in grandmother's distinctive handwriting. My hands shook as I unfolded it, squinting at the faded ink. Sarah, my dearest granddaughter, if you're reading this, then you've discovered what I hoped you never would need to find. First National Bank, Box 847. The key is taped under the jewelry box in my bedroom, the one with the dancing ballerina. Tell them you're Margaret Sullivan's heir. Trust no one else with this information. All my love, Grandmama. My heart hammered as I raced to Mother's house, using my spare key to slip inside like a thief. In grandmother's old bedroom, now Mother's storage room, sat the familiar pink jewelry box from my childhood. My fingers trembled as they traced the bottom edge until I found it. A small brass key secured with yellowed tape. The drive to First National felt like floating through a dream. At the bank, I presented my identification with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. half convinced this was some cruel hallucination born from months of grief and isolation. But the safety deposit box was real, and when the bank officer left me alone in that sterile little room, I lifted the metal lid and stared at contents that defied everything I thought I knew about my family. Stock certificates, dozens of them, some dating back 40 years, a sealed envelope marked for Sarah's eyes only in grandmother's careful script, and underneath everything, a will, grandmother's real will dated just 2 months before her death 5 years ago. With trembling fingers, I opened her letter and began to read the words that would change my life forever. My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then Claire has shown her true nature, just as I feared she would. I've watched that child since she was small, and I recognized something cold in her heart that frightened me. She looks at people like possessions, calculates their worth like a merchant at market. I knew she would come for the inheritance someday, so I prepared accordingly. The diamond necklace everyone covets. It's beautiful, yes, but those aren't real diamonds, sweetheart. They're the finest cubic zirconia money can buy, set in gold-plated silver. I had it made by a jeweler in Philadelphia 30 years ago when I started suspecting family members were eyeing my jewelry with greedy hearts. The real treasure has always been in these stocks technology companies, pharmaceutical investments, even a small stake in that computer company everyone said would never amount to anything. They're worth over $2 million now, and every single share belongs to you. You were always the kind one, Sarah, the one who called to check on me, who remembered my doctor appointments, who loved me without counting the cost. Claire sees love as a transaction, but you understand it as a gift. That's why you deserve everything, and why I made sure she would get exactly what her greed earned her: a beautiful fake that matches her beautiful fake heart. Armed with this stunning revelation, Sarah realized her grandmother had given her something far more powerful than jewelry. She had given her justice itself. The transformation began the moment I walked out of that bank, $2 million richer, and armed with the most delicious secret imaginable. For the first time in months, I felt truly alive. The crushing weight of worthlessness lifted from my shoulders, replaced by something far more intoxicating: the promise of perfect justice. Grandmother hadn't just left me money, she'd orchestrated the most elegant revenge from beyond the grave. While I sat in my car processing this windfall, my phone buzzed with a notification from Claire's Instagram. She'd posted another photo of herself at some upscale restaurant, the fake diamonds glittering under soft lighting as she raised a champagne flute to the camera. The caption read, "Celebrating another successful quarter with Mom's most precious gift. She always knew who deserved beautiful things. #blessed, #family heirloom, #worth it. Double quotes. The irony was so perfect it made me laugh out loud, a sound I hadn't heard from myself in months. I drove home and immediately opened my laptop, creating a private folder labeled Claire's Greatest Hits. Screenshot by screenshot, I began documenting my sister's public celebration of her worthless prize. Her social media was a goldmine of evidence: the necklace prominently displayed at charity galas, photographed during exotic vacations, even featured in a local magazine article about women who honor family traditions. Each post revealed more about Claire's spending habits: the designer clothes, the luxury trips to Paris and Napa Valley, the expensive dinners at restaurants I could never afford. So she thought. I realized she'd been liquidating other inheritance assets to fund this lifestyle, probably selling mother's antique furniture and collectibles to maintain her image as the successful heiress. But the most revealing posts were her subtle digs at me, comments about family members who don't understand true value, and captions mentioning how some people are just bitter when they see others succeed. She was still publicly humiliating me, even in my absence. Unable to resist twisting the knife, I began taking screenshots of everything: not just the photos, but the cruel comments, the dates, the locations, every piece of evidence that showed Claire's character, her spending, her public celebration of what she believed was her victory over me. My phone became my weapon, documenting each restaurant check-in, each designer purchase, each smug comment about deserving the best things in life. Claire was creating her own evidence, building the foundation of her public humiliation one arrogant post at a time. The best part, she had no idea she was dancing on her own grave, wearing fake diamonds while I quietly accumulated the proof that would destroy her reputation in front of everyone she was trying to impress. But Sarah knew that true justice required patience, and the perfect moment to reveal Claire's monumental mistake was approaching. The family reunion had been cancelled for 2 years running, first because of mother's illness, then her death. When I called Aunt Patricia to suggest we finally hold it again, her voice brightened with genuine excitement. "Oh, Sarah, what a wonderful idea. Your mother always loved bringing everyone together. She'd be so proud that you're carrying on the tradition." Perfect. I knew Claire wouldn't be able to resist such a public stage for her performance. The invitations went out 3 weeks early, giving everyone time to plan. Cousins from 3 states, aunts and uncles we only saw at weddings and funerals. And of course, Claire, who responded within hours, already posting on social media about looking forward to seeing family and sharing Mom's beautiful legacy. I spent those weeks in careful preparation, not for food or decorations, but for the most important phone call I'd ever make. The jewelry appraiser I contacted came highly recommended as certified professional with 30 years of experience and an impeccable reputation. When I explained what I needed, he was intrigued enough to agree to my unusual request. "I've seen family drama over jewelry before," he admitted over the phone, "but this sounds particularly complex. I'll be happy to help, as long as everything remains professional and honest." Professional and honest. Exactly what Claire's charade had never been. The morning of the reunion arrived crisp and clear. I wore a simple blue dress and grandmother's locket, feeling strangely calm as relatives began arriving at the community center I'd rented. Hugs, casseroles, and catching up filled the first hour while I watched the door, waiting. Claire made her entrance like she was walking a red carpet. The necklace caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows, each fake stone sparkling with rehearsed perfection. She'd clearly planned her outfit around showcasing her inheritance, a black dress that made the diamonds appear even more prominent. "Sarah," she called out, crossing the room with arms extended for a performative hug that allowed everyone to see the necklace up close. "Look at you, still wearing that sweet little locket. It's so nice that we each got something meaningful from Mother." The word meaningful dripped with condescension. Several cousins glanced between us, clearly sensing the undercurrent of tension. As the afternoon progressed, Claire held court near the refreshment table, regaling relatives with stories about Mother's final days and her own sacrifices as primary caregiver. The necklace became a prop in her performance, her fingers constantly drawing attention to it as she spoke. "Mother told me this necklace represented 4 generations of strong women," she announced to a captivated audience. "She said it should go to someone who understood that true value isn't always obvious to everyone." Her eyes flicked meaningfully toward me. "Some people think they deserve things just because they're the oldest, but Mother was wiser than that." I smiled and nodded, sipping my coffee while my heart raced with anticipation. Claire was performing beautifully, making herself the center of attention, ensuring every relative would witness what was about to unfold. "I'm just grateful," she continued, "that Mother finally saw who really cared about family, not just what they could get from it." As Claire basked in her moment of superiority, Sarah quietly excused herself to make a phone call that would change everything. 20 minutes later, I returned from the parking lot with David Morrison walking beside me, a distinguished gentleman in his 60s with silver hair and the kind of quiet authority that comes from decades of expertise. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet David Morrison," I announced to the gathered relatives. "He's a dear family friend and certified jewelry appraiser who happened to be in the area today." When I mentioned our little reunion, he was curious about some of our family pieces. Claire's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. She practically glowed as she stepped forward, one hand instinctively moving to touch the necklace. "How wonderful!" she exclaimed. "I'd love to have you look at Mother's diamond necklace. It's been in our family for generations." David smiled warmly, pulling a small jeweler's loop from his jacket pocket. "I'd be delighted. Family heirlooms often have fascinating histories." The room fell silent as relatives gathered in a semicircle to watch the expert examination. Claire stood proudly in the center, chin raised, practically radiating smugness as David carefully lifted the necklace to examine it under his magnifying glass. He studied it for what felt like an eternity, turning it this way and that, checking the settings, the clarity, the cut of each stone. Claire's smile grew wider with each passing moment, clearly interpreting his thoroughness as confirmation of the necklace's extraordinary value. Finally, David lowered the loop and cleared his throat gently. "Well," he said in his measured professional tone, "this is certainly a beautiful piece. The craftsmanship is excellent, and the cubic zirconia stones are some of the finest quality I've seen." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. "I'm sorry," Claire stammered, her smile faltering. "Did you say cubic zirconia?" "Oh yes, David continued metaphorically, quite clearly. High-grade synthetic stones, but synthetic nonetheless. The gold plating is nicely done too, though it's showing some wear around the clasp. All in all, I'd estimate the retail value at perhaps $200. It's lovely. Costume jeweler, whoever had it made, certainly knew what they were doing. The collective gasp from our relatives was audible. Claire's face drained of all color, transforming from smug satisfaction to pure mortification in the span of seconds. Her hand flew to her throat as if the necklace had suddenly become a noose. That's impossible, she whispered, her voice cracking. This is a family heirloom. The diamonds are real. They have to be. David's expression remained professionally sympathetic. I understand this might be surprising, but I've been appraising jewelry for 30 years. These are definitely synthetic stones. He glanced around the room with apparent curiosity. I'd be happy to examine any other family pieces while I'm here. Sometimes families have surprising treasures hiding in unexpected places. His eyes fell meaningfully on my simple locket. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Sarah, who slowly reached for her grandmother's locket with trembling fingers. With everyone's eyes upon me, I carefully unclasped grandmother's locket and held it in my palm. My fingers found the tiny crack where it had broken months ago, and with gentle pressure, I opened the hidden compartment that had changed my life forever. This locket has been hiding something for years, I said quietly, my voice carrying clearly in the stunned silence. Something grandmother left specifically for me to find. I withdrew the tiny piece of paper, now carefully laminated to preserve grandmother's precious words. She knew this day would come. Claire's face had gone from pale to green. Her hand still clutched at the worthless necklace around her throat. Grandmama wrote me a letter, I continued, unfolding the larger document I'd brought from my purse. She left it in a safety deposit box along with some other things. I think you all should hear what she had to say. My voice grew stronger as I began to read aloud. My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then Claire has shown her true nature, just as I feared she would. I've watched that child since she was small, and I recognized something cold in her heart that frightened me. Murmurs rippled through the gathered relatives. Several people glanced nervously at Claire, who looked like she might faint. I continued reading. She looks at people like possessions, calculates their worth like a merchant at market. I knew she would come for the inheritance someday, so I prepared accordingly. The diamond necklace everyone covets. It's beautiful, yes, but those aren't real diamonds, sweetheart. They're the finest cubic zirconia money can buy. The gasps from our relatives were louder now. Aunt Patricia's hand flew to her mouth. Grandmama had the fake necklace made 30 years ago, I explained, looking directly at Claire's horrified face. She suspected family members were eyeing her jewelry with greedy hearts, so she created a beautiful decoy. From my purse, I withdrew a manila folder containing photocopies of the stock certificates. The real inheritance was never the jewelry, it was these. I passed the documents to Uncle Robert, who examined them with the expertise of someone who'd worked in finance for decades. His eyebrows shot up as he read. Good Lord, he whispered. Sarah, these are ... substantial. Over $2 million, I confirmed. Technology stocks, pharmaceutical investments, even shares in that computer company everyone thought would fail. Grandmama was far wiser than any of us realized. The papers passed from hand to hand, each relative's expression growing more amazed as they understood what they were seeing. Meanwhile, Claire had sunk into a folding chair, her face buried in her hands. She left me one more message, I said, returning to the letter. She wrote, you were always the kind one, Sarah, the one who called to check on me, who remembered my doctor appointments, who loved me without counting the cost. Claire sees love as a transaction, but you understand it as a gift. Cousin Martha spoke up suddenly, her voice sharp with realization. Claire, you've been posting about that necklace for months. All those expensive dinners, those trips to Europe. You said the necklace was worth a fortune. And the way you talked about Sarah, added Aunt Patricia, her tone growing cold. All those comments about people not understanding true value and being bitter. You knew that necklace was supposedly worth $50,000, and you lorded it over your sister like a weapon. Claire finally looked up, tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of humiliation, not remorse. But the most devastating revelation was yet to come. As Sarah pulled out one final document that would shatter Claire's world completely. There's one more thing, I said, reaching into my folder for the final document that would complete Claire's destruction. Something that goes far beyond fake jewelry or real inheritance. The room had grown so quiet, I could hear the air conditioning humming in the background. Claire looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes, perhaps sensing that her nightmare was far from over. I found Mother's phone 6 months ago, I continued, my voice steady, despite the rage burning in my chest. All those text messages you sent her, Claire. 2 years of lies, telling her I was greedy, that I only called when I needed something, that I was calculating the value of her possessions. Several relatives shifted uncomfortably. Uncle Robert cleared his throat, but said nothing. I also spoke with the hospice nurses, I added, watching Claire's face crumble further. They told me how you convinced them I was too fragile to handle visits, how you intercepted my calls and told Mother I was going through a divorce and couldn't cope with her illness. My divorce that had been finalized 3 years earlier. Aunt Patricia's gasp was audible. Claire, you didn't. You poisoned our mother's final months, I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. You made her believe her eldest daughter was counting down the days until her death for financial gain. She died thinking I didn't love her. The silence that followed was deafening. Claire had stopped crying, her face now a mask of defeat and humiliation. I consulted with several attorneys about contesting Mother's will based on undue influence, I continued. They assured me I have an excellent case. But you know what, Claire? I don't need to. I gestured to the stock certificates still being passed around our stunned relatives. Grandmama's inheritance makes me financially independent for life. I don't need Mother's house or her other belongings. Claire looked up with what might have been hope, but I quickly extinguished it. However, this doesn't mean there are no consequences. Everyone in this room now knows exactly who you are and what you're capable of. They've seen you celebrate fake jewelry while mocking the sister who actually inherited everything. They know you manipulated our dying mother for personal gain. I looked around at our extended family, seeing the mixture of shock, disappointment, and disgust on their faces. You'll get nothing more from this family, Claire, not money, not respect, and certainly not the admiration you've been craving. You chose greed over love, and this is where it led you. As Claire sat in stunned silence, the weight of her choices finally crushing down upon her, Sarah stood to address the family one final time. Standing before my family, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me, not the peace of revenge, but the deeper satisfaction of justice finally served. I want to say something about Mother and Grandmama, I began, my voice clear and strong. This whole experience has taught me that true family isn't measured by what we inherit, but by how we love each other while we're here. I touched Grandmother's locket, still warm against my chest. Grandmama knew that the real treasure was never the jewelry, or even the stocks. It was the wisdom to see people's hearts clearly, and the courage to act on that knowledge. Several relatives nodded, still processing everything they'd witnessed. Claire remained slumped in her chair, completely broken. Mother loved us both, I continued, but she was manipulated in her final months by someone she trusted. That breaks my heart. But I won't let it define her memory or mine. I pulled out one final document from my folder, a letter I'd prepared the night before. I've decided to establish the Margaret Sullivan Memorial Scholarship for nursing students, I announced. It will be funded with a portion of Grandmama's inheritance and named for our mother. Students who demonstrate both academic excellence and genuine compassion for their patients will receive support for their education. Aunt Patricia's eyes filled with tears. Oh, Sarah, that's beautiful. Your mother would be so proud. That's what real honor looks like, I said, glancing briefly at Claire. Using what we're given to lift others up, not to tear people down. Uncle Robert stood and began clapping, followed quickly by the rest of our relatives. Even David the appraiser joined in, clearly moved by what he'd witnessed. Claire finally looked up at me, her face streaked with mascara and defeat. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Goodbye, Claire, I said quietly. I hope someday you learn the difference between winning and deserving. As I walked toward the door, surrounded by relatives who wanted to congratulate me and learn more about the scholarship, I realized I'd achieved something far greater than revenge. I'd proven that character matters more than cunning, that love ultimately triumphs over manipulation, and that sometimes the greatest treasures really are hidden in the humblest packages. Grandmama had been right about everything, including her final lesson. Karma has a way of ensuring that justice prevails for those who remain true to their values.